Thanks for joining us at the Berries Australia Victorian Drought Resources webinar. Today we're going to going over some ways that Victorian growers can prepare and weather drought conditions. We'll hear from AgVic on support offered via the state drought package, and we'll hear from Next Business Farm and Wellness on the free and federally supported financial services offered to growers. We'll also hear from Netafim Australia on assessing your water budget and for the best results on farm. And we'll have a brief overview of Agribusiness Yarra Valley's Project Ag Resilience program, which is focusing on extension of best practice for climate stress. I'd like to kick this off with our presenters. The first presenters we have are Aimee McCutcheon, the Horticulture Services Program Manager at AgVic, and Tracey Harper, who is their Senior Policy Analyst. So Aimee and Tracey, take it away.
Thank you, Sandy. Thanks for the invitation, and I'm really looking forward to outlining the drought support package with Tracey. So just a bit of context setting to start with, and not that you really need a reminder, as we're all aware about the majority of Victoria experiencing a significant rainfall deficit since autumn last year. You can see that the southwest has experienced a deficit extending back to early winter. And then we've seen it, although there has been some rain, it's not enough to be drought breaking. And we've seen it, you can see over the past 18 months with figure 2 that the dry seasonal conditions have extended out, and in particular taking you towards Morning Peninsula and the Yarra Valley, which is probably of significance, but also this Geelong area. As a result, the Australian government has announced a significant drought package, and I'll talk a bit more about this as we go through the presentation. So the BOM forecast for most of the state is showing that there is an equal chance of exceeding or not exceeding medium rainfall, which is figure 4 in the middle there for November. So although we've had winter and September rainfall and it has provided relief to many parts of the state, it's still insignificant enough to break drought conditions. And as I said, the BOM's forecasting that over most of the state, there's an equal chance of either exceeding or not exceeding the medium rainfall, which is shown in figure 4 and figure 5 there. So, and as we continue with rainfall, fingers crossed, hopefully through this spring and autumn and into winter 2026, there'll still be critical seasonal conditions where support will be needed through the sector. So on-farm water and fodder stores still remain a limiting factor for the agricultural production over the approaching 12 months. So it's not looking too good. As a result of this, we're in Agriculture Victoria, we're really conscious of the impacts of these seasonal conditions have had on farmers, and for horticultural farmers in particular, including for those on irrigation, temporary water pricing. It's approximately 13% above the 10-year average, and allegations are slightly lower compared to the same time in 24-25. There's also limited water supplies. I'm not telling the audience anything that they don't know here, and that's mainly due to the limited runoff in most areas that continue to pose a risk of further shortages over summer. And will, as I have said, will need significant above average rainfall in most of the areas to receive that runoff. And the big one, farmer fatigue and anxiety. We know this is a concern, and particularly now in this busy spring season, and we know that it's taking a toll on the significant decisions made by farmers during these conditions. So before I launch into the drought package, I just wanted to just to highlight some of the regular support services and resources that are always available to farmers across the state. So we've got the Rural Financial and Counselling Service, which Marshall Scott here is today in with this presentation, and he'll be running through in more detail the Rural Financial Counselling Services, the Regional Investment Corporation, who offer low interest drought loans of up to 2 million, and farm uh, management deposits, which assist primary producers to manage financial risk through tax deductible deposits during good cash flow years for withdrawal in low income years. So the Rural Financial and Counselling Service, the RIC loans is the acronym we use for the Regional Investment Corporation loans, and the farm management deposits. I'm sure Marshall will go into a bit more detail, and maybe even the farm household allowance, which is a fortnightly government payment. We'll go into a bit more detail during this webinar. From an Agriculture Victoria delivery, we're busily delivering the Farm Business Resilience program, and this is a program that's co-funded with the Australian Government, Commonwealth Government Future Drought Fund. That program runs through a framework of trying to increase business resilience in preparation to drought and other seasonal conditions, be it workshops on technical information through to mental health webinars and social activities. And there's also the Victorian Drought Innovation Hub, which is another online resource. They have an online resource, but they're also a hub which helps prepare the sector for droughts. So all of this information is available, and all this information presented today actually is available at that website, which is www.agriculture.vic.gov.au/drought. So the Victorian Government has a current drought package totaling $144 million, and the package is focused on recognising the range of experiences that farmers and communities are facing across the state, ensuring that the support is targeted to where it's necessarily and is suited to the varying experiences of the farmers, and that it's actually building capacity to help manage drought conditions, not only the current conditions now, but into the future, so the preparedness space. So basically, it's different impacts with different stages of preparedness. So the range of support programs that are on offer is the Farm Drought Support Grants, which Tracey will talk further about, the Rural Financial and Counselling Service, which I've mentioned, one-on-one farm advisory consultations, which I'll go into a bit more detail in a second, and group technical and decision-making events, which I'll mention in a second. But the other ones are Look Over the Farm Gate program. There's also a relatively more recent one, which is the Fees and Regulatory Duties Relief, which includes measures to waive a raft of livestock biosecurity duties, plant biosecurity fees, beekeeping registration fees, food safety fees, and other service charges. And it's a package delivering more than $10 million in relief to Victorian producers from the 1st of October 2025. So I encourage you to jump on the website and have a look at that one. And then there's the on-farm kangaroo management rebate scheme as well, which helps with the control of kangaroos. So there is just recognising the drought severity and longevity in the southwest Victoria. There's some further targeted measures of support on offer for farmers in the southwest, and in particular the 12 eligible LGAs that are listed at the bottom of that slide. And they include the household financial relief payments, which is up to $1,000 for farmers and farm employees and farming contractors, and that's delivered by the Country Women's Association. There's the primary producer support payments, that is equivalent to up to 40% rate reduction to provide cash flow relief to primary producers, and that's administered through local governments, sorry. There's the Drought Employment Program. So this is an initiative led by the Coromite and Glenelg Hopkins catchment management authorities to provide meaningful off-farm employment opportunities to people experiencing drought conditions. And there's the Victorian Drought Freight Network, which is a dedicated network to support fodder and grain movements. Not so much applicable to straight horticultural enterprises, but horticultural enterprises, some do have livestock as well. So I've left that one in as the key program of support for the Southwest. So, just touching on in a bit more detail about the farm advisory consultations and the group technical events, these are supported by a panel of technical specialists and they are available statewide. We've engaged more than 60 service providers to deliver the one-on-one farm advisory consultation service and group-based activities. So for stats wise, more than 630 farmers have engaged in the Agriculture Victoria's one-on-one advisory service. There's 119 additional drought support funded technical decision-making events that have been delivered. And since autumn 2024, there's been more than 600 group activities, which are focused on things like water management, livestock, of course, but also farm business management and on-farm budgeting. And there's a whole raft of topics and events that are taking place, and I encourage the audience to check out the details of the specific events and activities that are happening through our events page. So if you go to that drought support page, you'll be able to navigate to the events, or otherwise you can go directly there, which again, it's the agriculture.vic.gov.au website /events. Oh, one thing to note on the technical decision making and one-on-one advisory service, as I said, we have partnered with more than 60 service providers. We will be seeking further quotes from service providers in early 2026 to support the delivery of the autumn program. So if there is service providers on the line and who are interested, please get in contact when the EOI comes out. So the farm advisory services, the one-on-one that I keep talking about, it's really easy to apply for that service. As I said, just want to reinforce that this is open to farmers anywhere in Victoria. It's not just the Southwest. And we recognise that decision making in times of stress can be really overwhelming, and that sometimes it's good to take a step back and talk through with someone who can help release some of the pressures and feelings and put some actual plans in place. So I really encourage anyone who's in this situation to apply for the one-on-one farm advisory consultation. So what is it? It provides consultation with a service provider of up to 3 hours, and this could be either face-to-face, on-farm, off-farm, wherever you're comfortable, or even online. And then there's a follow-up call and development of an implementation of the project management action plan. So you can actually choose what consultant that you want to have a 3-hour consultation with. There's a list available from our website, and how you actually register is you fill out the expression of interest form. You review the list of approved service providers and indicate your 3 preferred service providers. You submit that application, and the chosen service advisor should make contact with you directly. There is support available to help you fill out this, to complete this process, and you can either email the drought support at agriculture.vic.gov.au email. First instance, have a look on our website, or call the customer service number of 136 186. I could not leave not touching on mental health and wellbeing. It's such a big part of seasonal conditions. The National Centre for Farmer Health is managing the Look Over the Farm Gate grant program, and this program has funded a range of community group-led events which support mental health and wellbeing in farming communities. We've had over 178 events approved. The blue indicators on the map show where these events are where these events are going to be held or have been held. I encourage you to have a look again at the agriculture events page and see whether there's any look over the farm gate community events near you. We've got still some more, they've got still more to deliver, given there's only been about 38 events that have been delivered. So I encourage you to keep looking at that events page, because there's no doubt going to be one in the area that you are in. Also, if there isn't, or if you can't get to some community events, the National Centre for Farmer Health website actually has a great book called Managing Stress on the Farm, and it's been written for primary producers. So there's some great practical tips for common farm stresses, and there's also the Steering Straight plan that's also available on the National Centre for Farmer Health website. Before I hand over Tracey, there's also on our website. So one thing that you take away is please visit our Agriculture Victoria drought support website. There's a whole lot of links and a raft of support that is available to you, and including resources and tools to help make some of those decisions. And one of the resources is a resource directory guide. It has all links to all the things that I've spoken about and to agencies that can help, be it mental health, technical decision making, etc. So please have a look at our AgVic website. Thank you, and I'm going to hand over to Tracey.
Thanks, Aimee. Hi, everybody. Yes, I'm going to talk in a little bit more detail about the Farm Drought Support Grants, because I think for a lot of people, this is one of the most interesting parts of our drought package. But not everyone, I guess, knows all the details or might have some questions. So it was originally called the On-Farm Drought Infrastructure Support Grant when it was first announced back on 30 September last year, 2024. At that stage, it was just for those heavily impacted in the 12 Southwest LGAs that Aimee already talked about. But in June, as we saw the conditions deteriorating across basically the rest of the state, that grant was expanded to statewide. So it's now available statewide with up to $5,000 per eligible primary production business. And it's now up to $10,000 for those businesses in Southwest Victoria that originally had the $5,000 grant. The aim is to support drought management activities, so on-farm infrastructure improvements and essential business activities to manage drought. And I'll go into a bit more detail in a minute about the type of eligible activities. It does require matching dollar for dollar co-contribution. In other words, it'll fund up to 50% of the total cost of the activity, and it's paid as a reimbursement once the activity is complete and invoices provided. So if you want to receive the full $5,000 grant, you'd need to spend $10,000 on a project or an activity, and then once that's complete, you can claim back the $5,000. Important to note is that expenses dating back to September, that says 2025, that should say 2024, can be included. So from when this grant was first made available is when you can claim expenses. So you may have already undertaken an eligible activity during that time, and you can claim for half of the cost of that activity. I just was going to go next through eligibility. It's relatively straightforward. Applicants must own, share or lease a primary production business. If you own more than one business, you can only claim for one of those businesses. You must have an ABN and have held that at the time when this grant was first announced back in 30 September last year. You must devote part of your labour to the business and derive more than 50% of gross income from the business, or generate more than $75,000 gross income from the primary production business. Importantly, as it says there, that's in an average year. So we're very aware that for many people this year or even the last couple of years may have been heavily impacted by drought conditions, and you may not reach one of those thresholds. Rural Finance, who administer the grant, are willing to look at previous tax returns in what you would describe as an average year, if you can explain how you've been impacted and show that difference. Next slide, Aimee. Eligible activities. The grant guidelines provide a relatively comprehensive list of the type of activities that are eligible. I think some people, especially in horticulture, might have looked through that list and seen a very livestock heavy list of activities and even thought maybe that horticulture businesses weren't eligible. That is definitely not the case. It was a livestock, I guess, industry focused grant when it was first released, but it is definitely available to all primary producers. And I've just pulled out a few of the activities listed in the guidelines that might be more relevant to horticulture producers. So things like irrigation system upgrades, automated systems, purchase or repair of fixed infrastructure, such as pumps, piping, upgrading tanks, technologies to improve drought management efficiencies, maybe soil moisture monitoring, weather stations, testing soil or water to support drought management decisions, or seeking professional advice to support business planning and drought management decisions. Now, Aimee already talked about the ability to access one-on-one support through a different part of the drought support package. I'd advise you to use that first rather than using your grant for that. But if you've already exhausted that, you could also use this grant to do that activity. Importantly, that list is a not limited to list. These are just some examples. I would encourage you to think back to how the guidelines describe what is eligible. So it's things that are going to provide infrastructure to help with drought management or essential business activities to manage the drought. So if you can describe how the activity or project you want to do will support drought preparedness and management, then it's most likely it will be eligible. Some examples of not eligible activities are your kind of standard business costs like rates, electricity, variable inputs, diesel, fodder, wages, vehicles. That's the type of thing that's not going to be eligible. Key message there is if you're unsure, check with Rural Finance. They can have a chat to you about the types of things you might be interested in. And on the next slide, I'll talk about the process, which can help you with figuring out if it might be eligible as well. I had a chat to Rural Finance about the most common things that they're seeing from horticulture people that are applying for the grant. And they said it is mostly water infrastructure. So they said irrigation equipment, water tanks, dam cleaning and repairs are the main things they've been seeing so far. I was also asked a question about substrate planting for horticulture. And again, I would say if you can demonstrate how that activity is going to improve drought preparedness and better position yourself, your business for the future, which it sounds like something like substrate planting would, then I would expect that that would be eligible. And again, it mentions there that we can date it back to 30 September last year. So how to apply? It's administered by Rural Finance. Now, not to be confused with the Rural Financial Counselling Service, who we have Marshall Scott here today to talk to you about that free service, which is fantastic. This is Rural Finance, who is an arm of Bendigo and Adelaide Bank, and they a separate arm, and they administer government grants on our behalf. So get in touch with them. Steps there, review the guidelines. There's the website. I've also included that phone number just if you wanted to call them with questions. Complete an application online, or you can download an application form and email or post it to Rural Finance. Rural Finance have said that the online applications would be their preference just because it's a bit more streamlined and maybe a bit quicker, but you're very welcome to do it by email or just send a post copy if that's your preference. Rural Finance will assess and provide in-principle approval. So if you haven't actually undertaken the activity yet, it's something you'd like to do, you can use this step to get approval from Rural Finance to say, yes, that activity that you were planning, you've got a quote for or whatever, that will be eligible. So now here's in-principle approval. You can go away and do that and know that you will get the money back for that activity. And you've got roughly 3 months to undertake the activity, but look, if there was hold-ups or something with getting contractors or whatever, it would just be a matter of talking to Rural Finance about that. Once the project is complete, or maybe you've already completed it, it's a matter of submitting the evidence of payment, which is tax invoices and official receipts, noting that just the invoice on its own is not sufficient for this evidence of payment step. You also need an official receipt or maybe bank statements showing that payment has been made, and then Rural Finance will make the payment to your nominated bank account. Rural Finance did just want to flag a few of the key issues they're noting with people doing applications. They said the first, second, and third most common issue is people hitting save but not hitting submit when they're doing the online application. So people are getting in touch with them, being unhappy because they're not heard anything back, and it's because they actually haven't hit that submit button once they've filled in all the details. Another one was people not providing the documentation required. So the application is quite straightforward. It's just 4 pages, relatively straightforward, but you do need to provide some evidence along with the application. So you need ID, such as driver's license, proof of property location, which might just be a rates notice, or maybe a lease agreement if you only lease the property, proof of income, which is tax returns or financial statements, noting that something like a notice of assessment, that summary, is not enough detail for Rural Finance to sign off on eligibility. So it does need a full tax return. And then proof of the proposed activity, so maybe quotes or explanations or proof of evidence of payment once it's been completed. And just some stats. So far, I think as of today, 4,293 applications have been approved. So that's quite a number, but there's still plenty more people that could apply if they would like to. By category, mostly you can see there in that pie chart that it's mostly water infrastructure that people are using the grant for, followed by stock containment areas. And then on the right, that's just where the grants are committed by region. This graph is a little bit old. You'll see the numbers don't add up to over 4,000, but it still gives you a sense of the spread. Obviously, those LGAs in the southwest have had this grant available for longer, so the numbers are far higher there, but we're seeing it increase right across all the other regions. That was all I wanted to cover, Aimee. Thanks.
Thank you to AgVic for that presentation. So next, we'll be moving to speak with Marshall Scott, Next Business Farming Wellness.
Thanks, Sandy, and thanks, Aimee and Tracey as well. I'll be sort of covering a few things that they've probably also covered, but not my detail won't be as good, obviously. And I'll expand a little bit. I'll talk a bit about drought, because that's the topic. I'll talk about the Rural Financial Counselling Service and also some of the other support that's available, but also some of the things that we're finding as well. So as Sandy said, I'm from Next Business Farming Wellness, and that's us there. And I'll start with the drought. If you can see that, look, it's a little bit different to the slide that Aimee had, so it's fortunate. So this is the last 12 months, and it's just an indication of how dry it still has been. So the concern has been that just water table in soils, so the soil profile is still very dry in so many areas. The I guess the catchment for dams and all that, they haven't been getting that runoff, so dams are extremely low. I've noticed a few dams that I've looked at where I would have considered them low, very low, even if it was late February, and they're sitting there now and they have not moved at all over winter. So it's a real concern for people with that. And what we've seen with that drought is it's probably crept across from southwest Victoria. It sort of stopped for a while. This is probably 18 months ago or so. Stopped a while, Port Phillip Bay, and then it's gradually moved across into southwest Gippsland. So it's been very, very tough. And some areas have had their driest period ever, in actual fact. And I'm actually up at Buchan in eastern northeast Victoria now, and it is starting to get very, very dry here. So whilst they've had a pretty good season all up, and it's a bit ironic that areas like Orbost have had great seasons, yet they can still get drought relief, but it is becoming dry now. So they're really concerned. You just wonder if this drought is still moving sort of eastwards, I guess. So when you go and see farmers, they love drought. They love it, but they hate it, obviously. They love talking about it, I should say. They love talking about drought. It's their big thing. But if it wasn't drought, they don't know what they talk about. But obviously they hate it. But this drought, they're all reminiscing, saying it's a bit like the 1967 drought. Even the 20-year-olds are saying, oh, it's the 67 drought all over again. It's that sort of thing. I remember when I first started here about 20 years ago, there was a man and he said, I said, oh, it's dry. And he said, oh, no, this is nothing. You should have been here when I was a boy. And I said, oh, was that, Black Friday 39? He said, no, that was nothing. You should have been here in 1927. Now that was a drought. So you do get the farmers talk about, but obviously it's a lot of challenges. And now I've got getting older. The one I remember is that one. Now that was a drought. That was the 82, 83 drought. And that was a drought, if you recall. We had the dust storm hit Melbourne. We had the Ash Wednesday, And for farmers, it was a terrible time. So whilst farmers had gone through heaps of droughts in the past, they got to this one, and this came very, very hard and it hit hard. And what was happening was that for farmers, for many of them, there was no light at the end of the tunnel. Interest rates were going up. Unlike the drought at present, where livestock prices were plummeting, I'm not too sure about berries or anything, but things were really, really tough. So they realised that farmers were not only geographically isolated, but also isolated in terms of their access to information and support that maybe some people in the city could access. So they put on rural counsellors to go out and help farmers. And pretty much the Rural Financial Counselling Service has been going ever since. So our service is coming up in where I'm in southeast of Victoria. So we're mainly Gippsland, Yarra Ranges, Mornington Peninsula, right through the New South Wales border. And our service has been going for close to 40 years. So our service is Commonwealth and state funded. So we're very fortunate to have that, which is really, really good. We are independent, but we do get our funding through the Commonwealth and state governments, who've been incredibly supportive of the Rural Financial Counselling Service over that period. The service is confidential. So when we go and see people, others shouldn't know that we've seen them. And that can be very, very important when we're seeing somebody who's finding things a bit tough, particularly if they don't want their neighbours to know. So it's confidential. We're all about planning. So we're about putting a plan in and having people work on that plan and come out in a better financial situation than they were before. And basically, to see us, there needs to be some sort of hardship component to it. So, and I'll expand a little bit on what assistance we can give, but there's that sort of hardship part to it where things are tight or they're certainly at risk of hardship. We will go out to the farm to see people, probably 80% or more. We go to the farm, but we have offices for us, and there are offices throughout the whole of Victoria. There are 3 services in Victoria, one in Western Victoria, which covers the whole of the western part of the state up to Mildura, and there's the northeast Victoria and southeast Victoria, and they all have offices, and pretty much they all operate the same way, going out to see people. So they normally will go out to see you at the farm. And so or another premises if need be. And it's an ongoing service. So we're there to assist people, not only just filling out a grant form, but also ongoing assistance to help them recover from the drought as well. This was mentioned briefly by Aimee, was the farm household allowance. This is something that people, especially I think a lot of growers would not be aware of. It's an income support package, and it provides 4 years of support in a set 10-year period. So that 10-year period is in a second run, if you like, and it commenced on the 1st of July last year. So 1st of July 2024. And we do see farmers who say, "Oh, no, I got that previously. I can't get it," or "Oh no, I'm in retirement age. I can't get it." Those sort of things. There is certain eligibility for it, but a lot of the things that people don't look at or don't apply for it, and they can still be considered. So it provides an income support, fortnightly income support, and you get 4 years, and you can apply now and get up to 4 years of support, and you can go on and off it during that 10-year period. So whilst it's not specifically for drought, the idea is if things are tight, give you some support, and then you might go on it for 6 months, a year, 2 years. Look, most people probably do stay for the whole program. And then you can go off it and you've banked the rest in case you need it further down the track. And we encourage people to consider that. It also comes with an activity supplement of $10,000 per person. So unlike the income support that's reset the 1st of July last year, this is $10,000 for the life of a person, if you like, at this stage. It could change. But they can use that again, separate to what Aimee and Tracey, well, especially Aimee, was talking about with the one-on-one AgVic support, professional advice support. This can be used for professional advice. It can be used to get legal advice. It can be used for financial advice, all those sort of things. But it's on the line, down the lines of being advice rather than using it to buy something. You can't use it to buy new strawberries or something like that. It's not for that. It's more for, okay, I need to improve my operating. Well, I need to have a look at my agronomy or something like that. I'll get someone in, and that activity supplement can be used for that, or it could be used for training as well. So that's something that I think people should consider. It's fairly generous with the assets limit, assets test, much more generous than the pension, and much more generous than New Start or Job Seeker, as they call it now. So there's opportunity for that. And also the income test is fairly generous as well. So you don't have to be making a loss to get it. But we can assist you with that. We do a lot of work in that space. If you need help with it or thinking about it, just let us know and we'll come and see, or you can come to see us. I want the rural finance, which Tracey in particular discussed. I'll jump through that, but just be aware that there's often grants there that you may not be aware of. Just have a look every now and then at the Rural Finance website. They've had some great grants, they've had safety grants, etc. And often, which fortunately is not the case for this one, often they're only up there for a very short period of time. So I always encourage people just to have a look at Rural Finance. And sometimes they have loans as well, such as drought recovery loans or flood recovery loans. I will mention other farm debt mediation, which is drought, which is farm debt, which is government, which is farm debt mediation. So I just left my time, and that is state government legislation. And what that means, it is compulsory for financial institutions to offer mediation before starting debt recovery on farm mortgages. So those days where, and look, they didn't literally happen, but they almost did, where a farmer would get up in the morning and find the mortgagee for auction sign on the front gate. Those days should have gone. It may happen if they've gone through farm debt mediation, but banks and major lenders, they have to have a security over the farm or water or something like that. It's not security over livestock. They have to, but it can be on machinery. They have to issue farm debt mediation papers before, or actually ask the farmer whether they'd like to go through farm debt mediation before taking recovery action. And we have had a bit of that activity, and we can help farmers. We've got a lot of experience in that, and we can help farmers work through that process, which can be very, very daunting. So I'd encourage anyone whose circumstances are tight to come to see us, or if they've received farm debt mediation, the papers, to come and see us regarding that. The RIC loan, which Aimee mentioned as well, which is a regional investment corporation, they have 4 main loans. It's a drought loan, which is probably relevant now. Agri starter loan, which can be used for succession planning as well as trying to move into agriculture. There's a farm investment loan. There's an AgBiz drought loan, which is more for farm rural related small businesses. The maximum rating applies for $2 million, and at present is a 10-year term with 5-year interest only, and the interest rate is at 5.18%. Now, that has not come down. Whilst interest rates have come down over the last 6 months or so, that has not come down. And that's because it's based on the 10-year government bill. So it is set, it's variable, but set the 1st of February and the 1st of August every year. Each 6 months is reviewed. So it is a potentially, interest rates could go up and that could come down, or vice versa. So whilst the interest rate's still probably lower than a lot of people have, it's probably not as attractive as it has been. However, what is attractive is that 5 years interest only. So a lot of people used to access that. And because it can take some pressure off their current lending, you can pay your current bank of some of the principal, but also pay off some of the debt that you may have. Just to go through that, look at there what it's for. This is straight off the RIC information on their website. And it's really for drought, making more drought proof, future drought management, funds of drought recovery activities. So it's all about drought, but it's also, most farmers use it to refinance debt. You need to keep 50% of your existing debt with your commercial lender when you make the transfer. So if you've got $4 million of debt, technically, all things given, you could transfer $2 million to RIC and leave $2 million with your lender. The only thing about it to be aware of is that while there is a fine line between, you've got to have some reason to get it, some challenges to get it, as in some difficulty, but also it is not a lender of last resort. So if things are really, really tough, you're probably unlikely to get a loan through RIC. But we encourage people, if you're interested, not self-assess. We can help you apply. It's not going to cost you anything. But also we'll follow up with RIC to see whether the eligibility, etc. I won't go through too much of that technical advice stuff because we've already seen that. The look over the farm gate has been really, really well attended. We found them really, really valuable. And I'd encourage anyone, if they've got an event near you, go along to it. It's usually you get some good feedback, you learn something, you catch up with locals, and the food has been exceptionally good. So that's great value. So I've always enjoyed that part of it. And Tracey's gone into great detail on the farm drought support grant. We've got a wellness program, and as Tracey said, we've received some extra funding through AgVic. So we're very involved in providing wellness support. So apart from providing financial support through the counselling, we also provide wellness counselling as well. So if you need assistance if things are tough, or if you know someone where their circumstances are tough or they're struggling, I'd encourage them to contact us and we can send someone out to see them. We actually go to see someone and we will ring them pretty much today if that's needed. And we often have that where someone's under real stress and something comes to me and I'll contact the council and they'll be on the phone to them straight away. Can't always guarantee that, but often that's the way we try to work. And there's a lot of things. It's not just if they're finding it difficult, if they're under financial stress or depressed, it can be just to help them work through farm debt mediation or just make better decisions. So just to be aware of that we do offer that. These are the things we see. I'll just leave that slide there. But there are a lot of things that we see, and the main reasons we have that is, we encourage people to make plans. Communication's critical. When things get really, really tight, you tend to not make decisions. So you get very much involved in the day-to-day running of the business rather than looking at the big picture. So we try to encourage people and work through them to make sure that they're making decisions. And a lot of that is, not having, a lack of planning. So we encourage people again to have a drought management plan or have some sort of recovery plan as well, and be better positioned when we do have the next drought, which undoubtedly we will. I'll leave these here, but what we are seeing is more wellbeing concerns, high debt, particularly in southwest Gippsland. There's a lot of animal welfare, which hopefully won't relate to the people on this webinar now, but we've had quite a few of them, so we're encouraging clients to work with AgVic as well in that area. Fodder's a big issue. We think there's a strong awareness of the farm drought support grant. However, we just feel, which Tracey said, that some of the horticulture industry may not believe that it's available to them or may not be as aware. Up here in Buchan, I don't think they're as aware as the farmers are, say, down in South, say, Leongatha or South Gippsland. We encourage farms to review their budgets. Make sure you go over your budgets and looking at them. Go to those community events. Don't be afraid to contact your bank when things are tough. They've changed a lot over the last few years. They're there to work with you, and we will help you work with them as well. And they usually have some hardship, even with any sort of hire purchase arrangement, will have some sort of hardship assistance there that you can utilise. And just be aware when things are hard, that a lot of farmers will leave their statutory requirements, such with the ATO, and might let them drop because they think, oh gosh, I can't make that GST payment. So I won't lodge my activity statement on time because I don't want to, because I can't make the payment. Speak to your account or whatever, but you're still better normally to lodge on time and then work with the ATO about how you're going to pay it back. And there's some of the other services we do as well. Some, like we're up here in doing succession planning and exit planning with farmers, and there's a little bit of a fee for service. But Next Service is still not for profit and very much a community focused program. I think that's all. If you want to, feel free to give me a call. My mobile's there. If you want to send me an email too, do that. And thank you very much for your time. Thanks,
Thank you
Sam.
very much, Marshall. I really appreciate your points about planning and reaching out early. So one of the things that we wanted to emphasize today is something that Peter Henry, our next speaker, will be talking about. Peter's from Netafim, Australia. He's an agronomist up in Northern Australia, and he'll be talking a little bit about water budgeting, how to use the data you have on farm and create data on farm to help you make good decisions. So Peter, please take it away.
Thanks, Sandy. Sandy said my name's Peter Henry. I work for Netafim based in Mildura as an irrigation agronomist. I travel through mainly South Australia, Victoria and New South Wales. I mainly deal with growers and users. I try and stay out of the office as much as I can. So I've been asked to talk to a little bit about water budget, assessing it, and I'll probably digress a little bit into efficiencies of application, which definitely help in terms of water savings. When we start looking at water budget, what is a water budget? A water budget is just basically like a financial budget. It creates an annual water use, and which is usually broken up into monthly and weekly water use. So you can budget your irrigation based on that budget, and it also obviously The budget also usually includes annual rainfall as well, but that obviously is very variable, not only in certain locations, but between locations which are quite close. How we calculate a water budget is really based on climatic data, historical climatic data. Usually we base it on ETO, evapotranspiration, which is the evaporation from a short green grass crop. And then we relate that back to the crop that we're dealing with, berries, blueberries, basically timesing that number by a crop coefficient. And that will give you the water use. And as I said, you can use that data to create a monthly, weekly water use is rainfall. Even though ETO will vary during the year, it's usually fairly steady on a monthly basis in terms of average. When we look at the ETC or crop water use, it does include rainfall. On the right-hand side is a little graph that looks at blueberries, looking at the various crop coefficients from bug break to the first blue fruit through to 100% and then through to dormancy. And as the, depending on what variety you've got, but as the canopy increases, the leaf area will grow from a relatively small amount of transpiration. So once we graph all that together, we can produce, usually on Excel, quite a good predicted annual water use of the system. When we start looking at substrate or under canopy, it's a little bit, say, shade houses or net houses or plastic. It's a little bit harder. Typically, we can't use that model. There is a way of doing it, but typically we don't. So we tend to work on the substrate number of somewhere around 4 to 6 litres per plant per day. What that budget allows you to do in terms of predicting your water use, you can key into it various scenarios in terms of rainfall pattern, whether you have above average rainfall. So obviously you've had more rain, you don't need to apply as much irrigation, even though under black plastic mulch there's some issues there. And when we have a lack of rainfall, you can sort of model drought predictions and how much water you would actually have to supply that plant. I've just put a third point there, and that talks a little bit about fertigation, which is probably a little bit outside what we want to talk about. But when we start planning a fertigation system, we really, what the model is going to be to enable us to design and then also you can use the water model to look at application during certain periods. And by using the two sets of data together, you can definitely increase the efficiency of applications of fertiliser or fertigation. So once we have this data, the other thing it allows us to do is to look at, depending on our water source, we rely on dams. We've got a new development, or we've got an existing development that we're starting to run out of water for whatever reason. We can use this data to look at sizing dams. And again, we can look at various scenarios. And obviously, the drier it is, the more water you'll have to supply through the irrigation. And if you're using a dam, then the dam will be bigger, need to be bigger to be able to supply the complete water requirement of the plant. And it also allows you, I suppose, to compare between alternate water source. Different sorts of water source will have a cost associated with it. So again, it allows you a little bit of to look at what's the best option. Do I increase my dam to a bigger size, or do I use potable water? And it allows you to come up with an optimum size or mix of water for your requirement on your farm. I just want to touch now, just fairly briefly, looking at systems specification. So we've got the water budget. So now we have to decide how much water we need. And this can definitely affect the efficiency of application. which can affect in certain circumstances the size of the storage or the amount of alternate sources of water we need. So it is important to understand your system, how much water it's putting on, and how that relates to scheduling. Because we're inefficient in scheduling, we'll be using more water, and it can be quite substantial. It's no use looking at your neighbour, mainly because usually you have different row spacings, different selections of different spacing and output, different application rates, and that will make your run times vary and the application vary. So you really have to do that for your own property. So in this worked example, the 3 bits of data you need to have a look at are the dripper spacing, the dripper flow rate, row spacing, and on these numbers I've sort of worked on a dripper spacing of 0.3 metres, dripper flow rate of 1 litre per hour, and say a row spacing of 2 metres. So there's various ways to do this. Here it's sort of I've worked it out in litres per hour. You're putting on, of drip tape, you're putting on 3.34 litres. So if you know that, then you just really need to know how many metres you're using per valve. I've worked on a hectare basis, say that 2 metre row spacing. So you simply divide 10,000 by 2 times by the litre per hour per metre, and that gives you the flow rate per litre per hour, and it comes back to an application rate of 1.67 millimetres per hour. So what does that all mean in terms of scheduling? If you've got you've worked out that you need to apply, say, 3.5 litres an hour, 3.5 mils in a certain day, your application is around 1.67, so 3.5 divided by 1.67 equal about 2 hours of irrigation. If you irrigate over 2 hours and decide I'll go for 3, there's 30% more water you're applying, and if you do that on the whole season, your efficiency decreases by 30%, or your water use increases by 30% for no net benefit. So it is really important to understand specifications. Just one point about there's 2 types of drippers, unregulated and regulated, or pressure compensating. The unregulated, which tend to be quite common, the 1 litre is at 15 pounds or 10 metres or 1 bar. So if your pressures are out and you don't check them regularly, again, you can be thinking you're putting on a certain amount of water, but you're either over irrigating or even under irrigating. So again, it's important to understand those sorts of parameters in terms of the pressure that the system's running at, and the actual application to maintain efficiency and optimum water use. So how do we collect this data? The main way to do it is to look at a water meter. It's really a bit of handy. It actually allows you to measure the actual water flow. So as I was talking before with unregulated dripper, if you're running at a higher pressure, you'll be putting more water on than what you think you are, but you'll be able to pick that up with the water meter. The water meter will, simply dividing the water you delivered by the number of hours will give you a flow rate per hour, and that should relate to the design flow rate. Most water meters are before filters, but then if it's an automatic filter, you're also measuring the water lost out of the backflush. The other advantage of a water system, again, if we don't have a clean system and we're not applying the amount of water that we think we're applying, and we're irrigating via the water budget, then if we're under, say the drippers are blocked, under irrigating, and its efficiency decreases, and that will definitely show in crop at a higher pressure. Again, you'll tend to lose water below the root zone. It's wasted. Wet areas can develop, especially usually at the ends of the rows where you tend to have heavier soils. So the water meter, again, not only allows you to monitor the water budget, it aids in irrigation scheduling, and importantly, it also gives you some historic data that you can use, either on a full-got application in those scenarios. Simply working on application rate is great to do, but the water meter data is definitely a lie detector, and that will tell you exactly what's going on. There's a couple of pictures to the right showing a 3-inch water meter after the filters going into the block, the top right. A similar scenario below. In this case, the water meter's been buried into a valve box. I sort of did touch a little bit on water meter data collection. You can do it manually, which is quite acceptable. Hopefully you can do it at the end of each irrigation, but most people will do it on a weekly or a monthly basis. And again, looking at that data and analysing that data versus what they expected to what actually did happen. And again, that can release increased efficiencies and hopefully minimise water loss and maximise uniformity of the crop. The picture on the right is a logging system, and there's a lot of them out there on the market. And that's the sort of basic information you can get from a water meter. It's simply have a pickup, and it can either be hardwired or it can be a wireless to a data logger or an irrigation controller. And it allows you to pick up when you irrigated. So those blue bars on the right indicate the irrigations when they started. The height actually indicates the duration. The volume that you applied to the field, and the width actually indicates it's hard to see, but there are different width bars on that graph, indicates the duration of the irrigation. And most systems allow you then to drill down into that data. And in this case, if you look at the one on the left, you've got a duration of 2 hours and a volume of 855,000 litres, and it gives you a flow, which is, again, it gets back to what I was saying in terms of being able to monitor your system, the performance of the systems, the maintenance of the system, and how well your water budget's tracking over the year. That's probably all I really want to say on budgeting. There's just a few points there which just probably summarise what I've already said. Water budget indicates seasonal irrigation requirement. From that, you can look at storage requirements or look at different sources and a mix between different sources. You can look at wet years, dry years, and again, get to understand storage requirements. I touched a fair bit on irrigation specifications, and once you have that information, it allows you to optimise your application efficiencies of your system. Water meters, again, they give the accurate data, which again you can use from a historical point of view moving forward to fine-tune your system. Daily data, you can again use that with other forms of scheduling to help enhance the scheduling and efficiency. And annually, it gives you the exact crop water use, which is an incredible figure to use in terms of system irrigation efficiencies and optimum irrigation to the active root zone. That's really about all I have to say. If there's any questions, please let me know.
Thank you very much, Peter. That was fantastic. I love your characterization as water meters is kind of a lie detector, just keeping us all honest. Moving on to our last presenter, just a very quick plug for a project that's currently ongoing in the Yarra Valley. We have Bronwyn Koll from Agribusiness Yarra Valley to talk about the AgResilience project.
So Agribusiness Yarra Valley has picked up some grant funding through essentially the climate resilience project that Melbourne Water, or our catchment management organisation, is running. The goals of the project is to help people with environmental management plans, and these in turn are 100% aimed at helping farmers with practices that improve their climate resilience of their crop. So if it means doing some soil amending or some irrigation budget amending so that your plants are more likely to survive a wetter wet or a dry or a windy session, that is the ultimate goal. So this is really looking at productivity. So everyone today is really sort of talk about all the plans that are in place. We hope to be able to bring you the expertise to do the do. Now, one of the main drivers about this is being ESG ready. So not many people are willingly looking at ESG, but it is something that all farmers are going to have to do as part of that supply chain in the future. It could be a few years away, but the idea of looking at what you do, measuring it and tracking it, and then making those adjustments is about being able to really prove your sustainability as part of your marketing supply. Now, it's not just simply handing in a heap of data. You've got to be able to collect it. You've got to be able to collect it efficiently. And my thoughts are, let's use this data for productivity. And by the way, let's report it what we need to report. So we hope to be able to help people with creating that environmental management plan. We're doing some group workshops. We're providing some step-by-step guidance. We'll bring in the experts that you need. For example, if berry growers in the Yarra Valley wanted help with a water management plan, just saying, we can fund that expert to come to you and work together as a group to work out how that water management budget is going to prevent you from having a muddy dam at the end of summer. So in an environmental management plan, we will be addressing things like soil, water, biosecurity, energy and emissions, air quality, biodiversity and waste. So all of these are part of the ESG reporting requirements. So let's take, for example, water management. We can help you out with some templates. We'll bring in the experts. So we might be able to bring Peter for the day, or Aimee's team might be able to help us with some water budgeting through AgVic. But we will bring the information to you. You can keep all of your planning and data capture confidential, and that is up to you to do this practice run for the couple of years before it is a mandated requirement through your supply chain with ESG. So we're here to help, and we hope that we can be helpful. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Bronwyn. We have a couple minutes for questions. So if any participants want to put any questions in the chat, just feel free to. In the meantime, I have some questions, and if any of our presenters has questions for each other, that's also welcome, because that often happens when we get a lot of people from different regions together. But I was wondering if I could ask our presenters from AgVic. You've mentioned some of the workshops and activities that AgVic are offering to growers as part of the drought package. Is there anything you can think of upcoming things that berry growers might be interested in?
Sandy, prior to the webinar, I did have a quick look to see what was around in terms of the looking over the farm gate programs. I couldn't see anything in some of the vicinities. There was some things down on the surf coast that could be relevant. However, we have just worked with yourself to put on an irrigation session that some of the audience may have attended, and we'll be in further discussions of what's next in terms of technical decision making.
Fantastic, thank you. Speaking of that, looking over the farm gate, several presenters were very, very positive about that. My understanding is funding for actually running those programs has recently closed. Is there a possibility that there will be more funding in the future for that?
Possibly.
In case, because as you said, there's not much in our berry growing areas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Possibly. I can't give you an answer. It'll depend on what the future seasonal conditions present us.
Fair enough. And on the subject of money, a couple growers have actually asked me about for the support grants, the drought support grants. They were a little because it's a kind of the program is running until the funding runs out, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Could we get a quick status update as to how much funding is approximately left?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's actually going out the door slower than we had anticipated. So haven't got the stats with me right now, but to say that it's there's plenty left and it's not kind of quick scramble, get your applications in quickly. It should be available for a while yet. That being said, whenever anything is not an endless bucket, it's always good to just get your application in and not risk it. But no, there's plenty left at the moment. And if the funds don't run out, the closing date is the 30th of June next year.
Okay. And what I'm hearing from all of our financial presenters is if you're unsure, then contact someone or put in an application just to find out, really. Is that accurate?
Yeah, absolutely. So Rural Financial Counselling Service are fabulous for all of that, whether it's the Farm Household Allowance, a RIC loan, even help with applying for the Farm Drought grants. Those guys can come out and help. But if it's specific questions around the grant, just give Rural Finance a call or send them an email and just ask the question. They're really helpful. They can talk you through it. So definitely just reach out and ask the question.
Okay. More work for you, Marshall.
No, no, Tracy, thank you, Tracy, yeah, for that. Yeah, but we're happy. We're there to help people. We've been busy, but not as busy as you might think with regards, especially with grants and that. I think a lot of people are actually managing to do it themselves. They're not that complicated, but often we find that if we can go and see people for a grant, it might be able to assist them with something else as well. So that's part of it too.
Okay. And for those, particularly for the drought grants, what's the typical time period from, say, a farmer puts in an application? When can they expect to hear from the funding body? When can they expect a decision to be made?
That is also a very good question. So when the grants went from just in the southwest to statewide with a very big growth in the bucket of money and who could apply, Rural Finance did find that their application times blew out, their assessment time, sorry. They brought on new staff and they worked to get on top of that, but it had been sitting at about 8 weeks to get a response, an assessed response on your application. That is coming back now quite rapidly. I think that last update they said by the end of this month, so the next couple of weeks, they hope that they'll be back to more like 2 weeks. But I'd say at the moment it's still probably sitting 3, 4, 5 weeks to hear back from them. But there are a couple of things worth mentioning on that one. If you had any concerns or you're worried about you haven't heard back or have they even got my application, just send them an email, give them a call. Like they really don't mind if you just do a check-in, just what's happening, what's going on, this has taken a long time. And if there was a reason why someone really needed that cash flow, like they've paid for the activity, they really need to get that grant funding back, you can contact Rural Finance and explain your situation, explain why you really need those funds, and they will bump you up the queue to prioritize the assessment. So if those wait times really are a concern, there are some things you can do and just get in touch with Rural Finance, because we know that they have been fairly long, particularly a sort of month or so ago.
Thank you, Tracy. And speaking of budgeting, Peter, I was wondering, because when we were talking about creating the water budgets, I had 2 questions for you. One is that there's clearly a lot of different variables. So particularly for growers, they might have a mixed system. So they've got like 10 hectares of in-ground and maybe 5 hectares of substrate. They'd need to be very careful about doing the calculations for each type. Correct?
Scenarios and different water uses, for sure.
Yeah. And in terms of doing those calculations, lots of growers have several different sources for water. They have, they might have a bore, they might have a dam, and some of them, can pull directly from rivers or creeks. So how, in terms of organizing that into a water budget, are there any helpful templates or resources that you think growers could use?
Some very useful templates available. I suppose we could help supply some, or a quick search, you'll be able to download them off the web. There's from some of the Department of Ags, they've got some good fact sheets as well as Netafim. And you can use that to work out the annual water use. And then I suppose you mentioned several different water sources. It's probably not only the cost that you need to take account of, it's also the water quality. Each source will have a different water quality. And sometimes maybe it might be better to mix the water quality depending on the water sources to give a successful quality for drip irrigation. So it's a little bit needs to go into it, but definitely that information is available. You can put a cost to the different water sources and come up with probably the optimum mix of the different water sources.
Fantastic. And how would you advise growers if they say one of their water sources is pulling directly from the river? Often it can be quite quickly. Those sources are suddenly cut off. There's they're not allowed to pull from them anymore. And how do you actually account for that in a water budget? How do you make sure that when you're accounting for that at the beginning of the year, you not, have an accurate water budget?
I suppose what you can go back to is the historical water supply from that source, which obviously will depend season to season, depend on the rainfall and the catchments. But I think there's some fairly good information available. So, if you've got a wet year, you should be able to model the amount of water you're able to pull from the river. If it's an average year, if it's a dry year, you can probably model those three sort of scenarios based on historical data to be able to then look at what other mixes you're able to use, whether it's a dam or a bore, to be able to supply the crop water use. Again, when you start looking at different sources, they can have different water qualities. A dam typically is in terms of salinity is usually probably pretty good. The river's probably pretty good, but there'll be differences in water quality in terms of total suspended solids. So they'll have different filtration requirements. When you start dealing from a bore, usually the water quality in terms of suspended solids is quite good, but then you run into the issues with chemical that you don't see in dams and rivers. So it could cause you some sort of precipitation, high bicarbonate, for example, or you have to also look at the salinity levels out of a bore. So you might want to try and then mix those sort of water qualities with, say, a dam or a river to come back to an acceptable quality that you can utilise.
So in addition to how much water you have, it's really important to understand how much quality water you have, not just I've got it, so I'll use it, which is often the case when you're desperate for it. But I've got it, I'll use it. But how can I make it most effective? Yeah,
for sure. A lot of variables you need to work through.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Peter. And thank you to all our presenters and to everyone who had time to attend today. We very much appreciate it. This webinar will go out to everyone who has registered. And in addition to that, see, Aimee's put a couple of resources in the chat. I'll make sure that there are links to those that go out as well in the email, and any other resources that our presenters today would like included. So thank you very much, everyone. Have a great day.